Going back to a little bit of my ancestry, Jerry Robert Nichols was my dad. He was born in Kinston, North Carolina in 1883. My mother was born in Stokes, North Carolina, in 1883. They were both about the same age, one a month or two of difference. And her name was Mattie Meeks.
Was she any kin to the Stokes?
No. No. She was a Nobles. Her mother's name was Lucy Nobles, married of Billy Meeks. And they were married, I don't remember just what year, but the oldest one was George, and he was born in 1906. So they must have been married along about 1904, somewhere along in there, because I think it was about 2 years difference in all the ages on down the line. After George came Earl. He was born in 1908, and Leroy was born in 1910. Lucy, 1912. And me, Johnny, was born 1916. But we had a sister between me and Leroy named Jessie Irene that didn't live but about just a few months, 4 or 5 months at the most. And she died from some kind of flu or something like that. All right, then came Mildred. I don't remember just the years that they were born, but it was about 2 years apart, right on down the line. Mildred, then Ray, and then Lola, and then Dallas. And Dallas was 6 years old when my mother died. We were all living in Rocky Mount, going to school. Dallas, I think, had just started the school in September when my mother died in the second day of November, 1932. So it kind of left my dad as Lucy says, he had a nervous breakdown, but I don't know what he had, but whatever he got was something that kept him alive for the rest of his life. He lived to be 84 years old, and he said that he couldn't be sick. And although he said he couldn't be sick, he did get sick, but he never took any medicine from the time that I think he was 48 years old. That he had this nervous breakdown or whatever happened to him. He got, as he said, saved. He just started living, and he was aged 48 years old to 84. He never took a pill. He said the Lord told him that if he was to take an aspirin, it'd be the same as a dose of strychnine to him. And he literally believed it. Well, at the ripe old age of 14, you have to understand that my dad was a kind of an oddball. You know what I mean?
Well, where were you born in?
I was born in Bethel.
Bethel.
February 6, 1916. And like I say, my dad, he was a kind of an oddball. He believed in everybody pulling their weight. And at the ripe old age of 14, not 14 years and 1 day, but 14 years, that was the law, he said, son, it's time to go to work. And he didn't mean tomorrow, he meant today.
Did you know it was coming?
No, I didn't know it was coming. In other words, I was in school one day and the next day I was out.
And he didn't tell you a week in advance?
Oh, no, He knew when the birthday was and he knew what the law was.
So what did you do when he pulled you out of school?
Well, the first thing he did, I don't know, I probably worked around the house there, in other words, on little odd jobs with him, but when the spring come, he sent me down to a fellow named Marshall Whitus, is down between Bethel and Greenville, North Carolina. Of course, I bummed down there, and, you know.
He didn't give you a bus ticket?
Didn't give me no bus ticket or nothing. I just hit the highway to go down there and report for duty. I stayed there with that man for 3 months, helping him into tobacco, suckering it, and, and housing it.
What was that for?
Well, that was to get some game chickens.
Oh.
He wanted to get a dozen pullets and a rooster so he'd get in stock of these game chickens that this fellow raised.
You mean fighting?
Oh yeah, so that was a big thing back in them days, and I got my game chickens and came on home. I can't remember how I got them back home, but you know, you do what you have to do. You know, you might take a sack and walk down the highway. It was about, well, it was 15, 16 miles to Tarboro, and that was about 8 or 10 more miles. So you're talking about 25 miles or so, anyhow, you know, from
A
home.
long ways back in them days.
Oh yeah, and then the next real job was whenever we went up to Robert McLaughlin's the next year, and he moved us up there to help put in tobacco, in other words, work his crop of tobacco. And this was supposed to be day labor, eating out of his commissary, and me and Papa and Mama, and of course the girls couldn't do much, but you know, they could hand some tobacco, I reckon, and different things like that. But all of us doing everything we could for that summer. We couldn't pay
the bill.
couldn't pay the bill of moving to Rocky Mount. Moving us back to Rocky Mount and eating out of his commissary. My mother had gotten $1.
Right there.
Got $1 to buy some cloth to put the girls in school when September come, and we owed him for moving us back to Rocky Mount when he, you know, whenever the summer was over. It was the 1st of September or so. But anyhow,
I'd like to see them.
Then the next
I'd like
year-
to see his grandchildren now, if they're about my age.
the next year,
They are.
the next year, Papa went into farming on a big scale himself. We went out there. He went out there in the river low grounds of Rocky Mountain. He rented a piece of land, about 18 acres. And you understand now, we was obligated to pay $5 an acre for the rent on this land. And you know, just to raise cane and peanuts and corn and feed a mule and whatever. And that money had to come first. We raised 7 acres of cane that year. Papa bought a cane mill, and we killed half a dozen plug mules, anywhere from $1 to $10 a piece, grinding that cane.
You killed them?
Well, it died, you know, worked itself to
Working
death.
to death.
And so the next year, boy, he got big things in his mind. We're going in a big scale. If 7 acres will make you a little bit of money, 32 acres will make you a whole lot more money. So the first thing he did after we went to a bigger place over across the river on the other side of the river in a low ground, and we put in 32 acres of cane. Well, it didn't take.
How did you break up 32 acres of land?
With the mule, with a 1-horse plow. We had 2 mules. Earl and me both was running.
So
them.
you'd follow one another?
Yeah, follow one another
How
around.
old were you when you were doing this?
Well,
15.
15.
You were a grown man.
Yeah, well, let's see now, I was 14 and worked up there with Marshall, and then 15
You
I
ever seen a
worked at
plow
7
go
acres.
on? He's talking about the one
16, we worked at 32 acres.
32 acres. I
And,
can't imagine breaking up 16
and I mean to tell
acres
you-
with one plow.
I mean to tell
I
you,
bet it took you 3-4 months to break
all the winter.
All the winter.
Every day that it wasn't too wet to plow,
break it.
we was out there breaking ground. And it was plum thickets, briar patches. Land had been laying out, you know, for several years. So really, the man should be paying us
to clear it
to
up.
clear it up. You understand what I mean? And yet we were paying him, I think it was $5 an acre too. Yeah, $5 an acre. And Lord have mercy, shortly after that, no, the latter part of 30s, we went up in Virginia and bought land for $10 an acre, you know, with tobacco allotment on it.
And a house.
And a house. I mean, and there we were paying $5 an acre just to rent it and clearing the land up for the man to get it in good shape for him.
Who all was doing this? Was you and Granddad?
Me and Earl and Papa, he never drove that mule. He was off through the country building a pack house if he got a job. No, he
He was
managed
doing
this.
carpentry work, but you weren't doing carpentry work.
Oh no, we were staying there, and then when Mama died in 32, we had raised that 7 acres that year, and the mules couldn't grind it before the frost comes. So we saw the frost was going to get there first. We cut it down and hauled it to Rocky Mount in his backyard. We had that piled up in the backyard and wrapped up with the fodder. In other words, we stripped the stuff and piled it and then threw fodder over it to keep the frost from hitting it. And we were grinding and cooking molasses till Thanksgiving or later. In other words, about the time Mama died, we were still cooking it. Right there in the backyard.
I bet people would come while you
Oh
cooking
yeah,
it.
you could smell it. You could smell it all over Edgecombe County, the side of Rocky Mount.
So that must have been about the time just before you left and went to Florida, wasn't it?
Well, I was just going to get to that. See, now, the second year, we raised it 32 acres. I stayed there that year, and it got a little hot under the collar around there because
Why did it get hot?
it got
Come
hot
on, we
because
wanna
I
know.
sold a piece of Papa's
We want to
machinery.
know. Don't just gloss over it.
Well, see,
Hey, everybody got a skeleton in the closet.
well,
I
see,
want to know all the
you know,
details.
young hot blood, you know, and well, you know, to make a long story short, I sold this piece of machinery. It was a skiver and cutter for leather.
You were
goods.
16 or so.
I was 16, and I sold it to a fellow named Lamb that run a shoe shop at South Rocky Mount for $5. It was a $125 machine. Lamb should have known better than to bought it off of me. He knew it was Papa's machine, and knew I didn't have no authority to sell it.
You're right.
But anyhow, when Papa found it out, he commenced to make it a little bit warm around my hiney and my neck. He jumped on me right on the bed, and Earl was in there.
And what did Earl say when he saw you doing it?
But Earl said, "You ain't going to choke that boy." He said he probably needs a good whooping, and if you need some help to hold him, said, "I'll hold him for you to whoop him." He said, "But I ain't standing here and seeing you choke him to death."
He
So
was
the old man,
he was a liberal then.
So see, he told him, he said, "I don't think your fingers is long enough to reach around my throat." He told
So
him
you
that.
pulled him off of you, huh?
Yeah, he pulled him off up, or didn't. He made him turn me loose.
Yeah.
So the old man, he told me, he said, "Well," he says, "I said the road was wide open." He said, "I want to ask you a question." He said, "Did you know that it was wrong when you were selling that machine?" I told him, "No." He said, "Well, do you know it's wrong now?" I said, "Yep." He said, "That road is closed." He said, "Get your overalls on, and you're going to go to work." Well, that was long about, I reckon, before Christmas. Well, won't know nothing to do. I went over and talked with Lucy the first chance I got, and between Lucy and George, they planned the whole move for me to come down there and.
Well, that was after you raised Cain the second year, wasn't it?
Yeah, after we made the
Crops.
the 32 acres.
Golly, that was a lot.
That
we
was
made
you,
it.
that was just you and Earl there, wasn't it?
Yeah, just me and Earl.
Yeah, you said you were living out in a little shack.
We were living in what was no, it's about like a single garage. You know, I don't remember what the building was being used for in Rocky Mount, because I don't think it was a. I don't
Was it
think-
there on the
We
land?
might have had a car.
Was it on the farm or?
We had moved it from Rocky Mount to the farm.
You
know, just something that you could kind of lift up on a wagon. Seemed like I
Are
don't
you
know.
talking about the mill?
No, I'm talking about what we lived in.
Oh, okay.
Was
Okay.
the tin building
Yeah.
and just a dirt floor in it.
Mhm.
And we had a 50-gallon drum in the corner we did our cooking on and keep them warm in the wintertime.
Hey, tell about that time you and Earl got into wasn't it some liquor, that cane mash, you turned to some liquor and made you dizzy or something down there?
Yeah, we were just walking around one day. It was where this barrel that you throw the skimmings in. You know, we just left it sitting there, and then in the winter time we just happened to be walking back through around in that area, and went there and got to filling with it, and you could push that top scum back, and it was just clear as vinegar down there. Man, I tell you right now, we started in all that stuff, and yeah, it was right good too. It tasted like some kind of brandy, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it had worked off.
Didn't do nothing to it, just made itself.
Yeah, it just made itself because there's enough sugar in it, you know, sweetening in it to do that and ferment.
Weren't you involved with the Rocky Mount Welfare Agency?
Well, we sold molasses, the sorghum, to the welfare, that such as it was. It wasn't welfare like we know it today. But they did have a welfare that they dished out food to the needy.
What kind of
Not
food?
to these here women that having babies every day. I mean, you know, every other.
What kind of food was it? Just molasses?
Well, no, you could go there and they had different things, vital foods like cornbread
But
and.
you said you rode around in town and.
Oh yeah, we
you
put a
sold
barrel of
and
molasses on the back of that mule and wagon.
You sell it also.
And sell it for, we're selling it for 50 cents a gallon or 15 cents a quart.
You sell a lot of it?
You better believe it, we sold it all.
That was during the Depression.
Yeah, you'd see them people, I'd go down the street and I'd ring my bell, I'd say, all right, molasses boy. And you see the people coming out of the doors with anything from a cup to a 5-gallon demijohn. And buying anywhere from a nickel's worth to 5 gallons. You know, a 5 gallons we'd sell it to them for, I believe it was, I can't remember, it might have been 40-something cents. And that'd be $2.50 for a demijohn.
Tell us how you wound up in Florida.
Well, Lucy, like I say, get back to the story, Lucy and George had worked it together somehow. I was gonna go down there and stay with George because it was getting too hot around home.
First of all, what year was this?
This was in 1934. See, 1934. See, 32, we raised 7 acres of cane, and 33 we raised 32 acres, and then in January of 34, I reported to Lucy's over in Rocky Mount that, the day before I was to leave, and she had it fixed up with this C. Henry. I'll never forget it. C. Henry is this trucking man that you see his trucks all over the highways nowadays. And that was when he first went into business. That he was driving his own first truck.
Henry.
C. Henry. The initial, I don't know, I think his name was Claude Henry, Henry. And it's a story, that's a story in itself too. He was a cop before that got busted on account of some underhanded stuff, and the city had to fight to save him from, save their record as well as his.
So you rode to Florida with him on one of the trucks?
Yeah, on his truck. He didn't have one truck. It was the first truck he got, and he was the driver. Now it's a fleet of them. Of course, I reckon he's dead, and maybe grandchildren probably running it by now.
Yeah.
But anyhow, went down there and stayed with George the year of 34, and came back at Christmas time. And while I was down there, by the way, I worked at A&P store as a stock boy.
Yeah.
And I worked, and I would have continued working there. That was in Fort Lauderdale. But he moved because we were living in an apartment, and he needed more room, and he found this place in Delray Beach that he could afford. That was a house that had several bedrooms, and he had several, I don't know, 2 or 3 of the other young'uns besides me, and he needed more room. So he rented that house and moved to Delray. Well, then I went to work with a fellow across the street from him that run a wood yard.
Yeah,
Well, the wood yard,
we don't want you to
Dry out.
You want some of that, yeah.
notice he had 2 trucks. One was a Model T and one was a Model A Ford. The Model A Ford was the one that he delivered wood on, and also picked up baggage at the depot. In other words, people coming in and shipping their trunks or whatever, he'd have orders to go pick up the trunk for. I remember one time we went down and picked up a trunk for Al Cap and carried it to his estate. And then he also had this oil route. Model T was an oil tank on that truck. And, he just delivered oil around to people's houses that were heating with oil, what little bit of heat. We don't have much heat, but there's so much. And then
How long did you stay in Florida?
That year.
Just in 1 year? So you were there a year.
I came back right at Christmas time.
And what kind of reception did Granddaddy give you when you came back?
Well, when I came back, I went over to where Paul was at, and he was building a house, and he looked down at me and then turned back to his nails.
Did he nod his head or
Did
anything?
nod his head or
He
nothing.
hadn't seen you for a year.
Hadn't seen me for a year.
That's just the way he was.
That's just the way he was. I mean, if you had to make the move to get his attention, you know, and I mean, you had to, a lot of, in fact, I can tell you a story about Granddaddy. It seems that, now this was told to me by George and Earl, I believe by George mainly. It seemed that George, when they lived in Bethel, about the time I was born, see, George would have been 10 years old. Anyhow, it was some kind of problem that the kids had at school. And of course, Bethel at that time, everybody knew everybody else. It was actually smaller than Winnable, I think. I mean, Victoria is today. Well, the principal went down to see Jerry. Papa was working, seen the best I can remember, he was building a house for a doctor there in Bethel. And this fellow knew it, and he wanted to get word to him. No, he didn't want to wait to send a note. He wanted to talk to Jerry. And Papa was up on top of the house, and George tells it that he said, if you want to talk to me, in other words, the man stood down here, was motioning for him to come down. He wanted to talk to him. You know what Jerry told him?
Come up there, didn't
Yeah, if you want to talk to me, you come up here. And that's just the way he was. I mean, and if he talked to him, he was going to talk to him between the hammers that are going down.
Oh yeah, we'll go stop.
Oh no, So, I mean, that's just a little sideline thing
Well,
there.
you know what time when Mildred came back from California one time, and I remember he was working on the house, and I believe he was on the roof then, over at that Carter house. He ain't seen her maybe in 5 years, 4 or 5 years. He never missed a lick with his hammer, did he?
He just that way.
So what year was it when you came back from Florida?
Well, that was in, the Christmas of 34.
And what did you do when you got
Well, 35, in other words, in January, in other words, after I saw it, I couldn't do nothing with Papa. And George, he didn't tell me I couldn't come back down there, but the main reason that he came up was to unload me. I know it now. You know, he just had more on his hands than he could handle.
He had several other kids too.
Yeah, several others, and he just knew that, in other words, here I am, pushing 18, you know, now. Was going to be 18 in February. So, he brought me up there, and they had Christmas with Lucy. Anyhow, after Christmas, wasn't nothing for me to do but join up for the CC camps. So me and one of my buddies, I forget his name right, Dale, and I think his mother was some kin to Papa. In other words, we used to hang around a lot together, me and this boy. I can't remember his name now, but the main thing I hung around with him because he had a good-looking sister that I was kind of hot on. And, well, anyhow, we both signed up to go.
Good thing Mama ain't around here.
And you know, when I tell you that girl.
Let's get back to the CC.
Yeah, we better not. Laura might see this. You don't want me.
Well, the CC camp.
We'll save that for another
You know
tape.
that's another thing. Both of us signed up to go, and he failed the test, so he couldn't go, and I went by myself.
What was wrong with it?
I don't know, there was something wrong with him, hearing or something.
So where did you go when you went?
Where did I go?
Yeah.
Oh, they sent me to Cherokee, North Carolina.
What were you doing out there?
Well, I was on the crew that was crushing rock to build roads. We were building a road where a railroad was. They was taking up the cross ties, and that road was going to shorten the distance from Asheville to Knoxville. And I can't think that it was the road that is, 40 now? Interstate 40. I don't think it was that road, but it was going to save a lot of distance. I think they said it was going to save about 50 miles or more, you know, rather than the way they used to go around the mountains.
How long did you work out there?
Well, that's another story in itself. April the 1st, in other words, I went in there right after January the 1st, and I think it was the 10th of January, so it stayed right at 3 months. You signed up for 6 months, but what happened, you know how it is with Uncle Sam's money, every so often they got to the Congress has to appropriate money to keep going. So April the 1st, the money run out. So the commander of the place, the last day of March, had a meeting. I mean, had us all to come out there and he was going to address us. And this is like 2 o'clock in the evening. He said, boys, he said, we got bad news, but we got good news too. The bad news is that starting tomorrow morning, we don't know what's going to happen. And all we are guaranteed is that we can feed you if you stay and work. Ride this thing out, see what Congress is going to do. If we appropriate more money to extend it, okay, everything will be fine. You'll get your pay and everything. But if they don't, you'll be left to go home any way you can. We won't even have transportation, but as of today, we have. In other words, anybody that wants out right now, today, we can give you transportation home. The only way, if you stay here tonight, tomorrow morning you go on a different schedule. If they don't appropriate more money, we won't have transportation for you. All we can do is feed you till we find out one way or the other. So, me and my buddies from Tarboro, by that time, I'd done met these friends from Tarboro, which was just 16 miles from Rocky Mount, so they seemed like home folks to me, And we decided we were going to ride her out. We won't need a leaving. But overnight,
It's just like kids, isn't it?
overnight, we changed the
So
mind.
you had to catch a ride to get your way home.
So the next morning, just as soon as we went and had breakfast, we got talking, we want out. So he goes to the commander's office.
Gonna give you a bus ticket, huh?
No, we just told him we decided to change
But
his
he
mind.
gave you a bus ticket the day before, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he gave us a
So
text.
you lost your way home.
Oh yeah. So here we go. He said, well, boys, he said, I can't keep you here. He says, as far as I'm concerned, you know what I told you that yesterday evening. He said, I could have give you transportation, but he said, I can't give you nothing now. He said, if you want to go, just check in your bed rolls and, your equipment. And,
How much money did you get paid for that 3 months work up there?
well, they paid us, it was $30 a month, but we got, what was it, $3? No, $5, and they sent 25 home.
You got $5. Who did they send it to? Granddad?
I sent it to Lucy
Oh, okay. That's why.
to help out with them kids she was
Uh-huh.
having, see.
Well, that
So
helped
she
her a
got
lot.
$25 a month. I figured I was doing, and $5 would give you all the money you need. I mean, you go to town. You couldn't go to town, but except on Saturday, no how. And if you had to stay home and stay in and clean the barracks, the way they worked that, we had 4 barracks, David, and 120 boys in each barrack. It was just like military, and we were graded every day with cleanliness and neatness.
I had it cut off there for a little bit. I hope I haven't missed a lot of this. I cut the thing off by mistake. Go ahead.
Well, anyhow,
I wonder how
They-
much
they-
I've cut off.
they come through.
Let's just take a break and check and see where we at. I cut.
Okay. Like I say, the captain told me that, told us boys that if we were alone as long, just turn the stuff back in, and they did have a truck going to Sylvia, which was about 30 miles away, that would be heading our direction. They were going for supplies that we could ride that far. So we checked our stuff all in, and I don't know, about 10:30 or so, caught the truck and got to Sylvia, and then we was on our own. We had a barrack sack with what clothes we had, and we was catching rides on the highway, and walking, and anyway, heading towards Asheville. Well, along about late in the evening, now you're speaking about, this was April the 1st. The days were getting a little bit longer, but they weren't real long like in the summer yet. So it was about, I don't know, just before dark. I think probably 7 o'clock in the evening, we got to Asheville. And we had caught rides from anything on like a buggy, a wagon, a Model T, rides 3 miles down the road and walk 5 miles. Anyway, we finally said that if there was any faster way, it would have to be on a freight train. Mm-hmm. So we went over to this service station and we asked a fellow where, if a fellow was heading east, could he catch a train, a freight train.
That was the first freight train you ever hopped?
I never rode a freight train, but I mean, these mountains look ominous, you know, and you can get out there and ride 3 miles and walk 2 or whatever. And I had, I don't know what it was, 175 to 200 miles or whatever. Well, it was more than 200 miles.
It was a long way.
From Asheville to Rocky Mountain. Anyhow, he told us down the road there about 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever it was, a little place called Black Mountain. And that he felt sure that there was some trains coming through there. And he thought one was coming through about 9 o'clock, he said. So we went out there, we walked on up the highway. The highway was about a block away from the railroad. And we got to the place. Well, there was a service station there. I remember we went in there and we just about spent what money we had. I think it was about 25 cents between us. And we bought a piece of cheese, some crackers, and a drink apiece, something like that, you know, just for give us sustenance. And then we goes over here to it was like a signal station, you know what I'm talking about like a DF tower or something, you know, where they used to pull them boards for the train to take a siding or something. And I asked the guy in the was the operator there, agent or whatever he was, about freight. He said, yeah, he said there's one coming through that's going your way. I know I was like going to Raleigh or whatever, you know. He said in about just a few minutes. He said, but I tell you, you want to be sure, don't let nobody see you get on that thing. He said, because they'll pull you off. So he said, best thing to do is just lay out there in the weeds, you know, over there in the bushes, till the train comes by. They're going to stop up at the water tank, take on water. And he said, while they stop, you'll have a good chance to get on, and just keep quiet, you'll be all right.
What did he need water for?
This is
it was a steamer, wasn't it?
Steam engines. Anyhow, we went out there and laid down in the bushes. Sure enough, for a few minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, we saw this headlight coming down the track and slowing down. And about the time that it got on by and the caboose come by, and we were running alongside the train, and these boys said, I don't know whether we ought to get on this train or not. Now, these are my buddies from Tarboro. And somebody, I think a brakeman or somebody in the caboose said, all right, boys, don't you get on this train. That was all she wrote. Them two guys just disappeared. Up on the train, and it was a load of coal. I threw my barracks bag on, I pulled up there. Well, anyhow, we got on down, rode that train, Salisbury, I believe was the place, and the thing started slowing down. I said, what in the world is this thing slowing down for? And of course, I was scared to death, you know, that if it stopped and I was on it, somebody was going to catch me and I was going to jail. That was my thought. So here I come off the train, you know, and that thing started slowing down, and it felt like it had stopped. That's one thing I found out right early in the game. when you're riding a freight, when it seems like it stopped, just wait about 5 more minutes because that thing is still rolling.
Just in the nighttime.
Yeah, this is 10 o'clock at night or so. So, and I dropped off that train, and then I went going like this. In other words, I dropped my bag, and then I dropped. And when I come to see where I was at, it was a trestle. I can't remember if it was a creek, a river, or what. If I'd have dropped a second later, I would have hit them cross ties. In other words, I would have got killed, ain't no doubt about it.
God.
That's how green I was to know how to get on the
Jumping
train.
off at night and then don't even know where you're jumping on.
That's right. I come down that ladder and I dropped on the ground, and of course it knocked me right down. He was probably traveling 15, 20 miles an hour, you know. But it just, you know, it felt so quiet that it felt like you done stopped. Well, anyhow, went on over there, and I asked somebody in the yard there. I says, "Is this train going to? I believe it's Statesville. It was a yards down there. I forget the name of it now, but he said, no, this train is heading for Charlotte. He said the one that if you're gonna catch it for that place, Statesville, is behind this train. It's probably half an hour later." He said, you catch that one, but this is going to go down to Charlotte, you know, it's going to go
Going
down.
west. I mean, going
Well,
south.
southwest,
Yeah,
instead of west. I
right.
wanted to go.
You want to go east, kind of.
Yeah, I wanted to go east. I mean, it was going southeast instead of east.
How long did it take you to get back?
Well,
You left
the next day, see, I rode that thing all night, and about daybreak, I caught that train, let's say, and then when I woke up, I had buried myself up in front of a coal car. Everything was cold just about coming out of there. I went to sleep, propped that thing up on made me a pull out of my bag, and next thing I know, this detective had his light. I think it was a 5 or 7 cell light that he had right in my eyes. He said, "Boy, what are you doing on the railroad property?" The train had done stopped, and it was in these yards. What is the name of the yards? Is it Statesville or Statesboro? Salisbury. What's it? It's about 2 miles south of Salisbury, or east of Salisbury,
Well, I don't know the name of the
instead of
yard.
Statesville. Salisbury.
Salisbury is big.
You know, it's just a little bit west of Durham, Raleigh, somewhere over there, not too far. But anyhow, I gave him a spiel, you know, exactly what happened. I was trying to get home and from the CC camps, and he saw my bag. He said, "I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, boy." He said, "But let me tell you something. Get the heck off of the railroad property, right quick." So I didn't argue with him. He was over on that. He was on a train over there on that side. I was walking the top of the train, and I didn't come down on this side thinking maybe he might meet me. I jumped off on that side and went back up to cars. And he told me, he said, "You can get on the highway over there, you know, up there, and go back to Salisbury." So I got to Salisbury. It was just getting light good, you know what I mean? The day was breaking when he woke me up with that light. But I got back up there and went in that depot and washed up some, and I rode the highway the rest of the way. I got to Raleigh that night. In other words, from Salisbury I got to Raleigh. Slept in a abandoned car is what it was, on a, you know, like around a service station or a garage or something of it. And the next morning I caught a ride with a fellow, a bakery truck, and he carried me over around, somewhere around the Capitol building. I remember we passed by the Capitol, and it carried me out to the highway. He made a special trip, carried me out there where good corner, he said, to catch a ride to go into Rocky Mount. And I got to Rocky Mount that day, you know, sometime that afternoon.
What did you do when you got back?
Well, that's when, let's see now, that was April the 1st. Oh, I got it with Leroy. Leroy had these traveling shoes on about then.
Yeah.
He had just got home from serving all of his time with the army,
Must have been the Briggs, I understand.
Well, and also, you know, from rolling that quill.
Yeah, you don't want to put that on Nichols' history.
Well,
tape.
Well, it's the fact, you know, he pulled 13 months, and like you say, when they give him 13 months, it didn't mean 1 month. You know, 13 months, it meant 13 months by the calendar. And he made little rocks out of big ones in Bluefield, West Virginia.
That was after he got out of the Army.
After he got out of the
Army brig.
Out of the Army brig. So Leroy, he had his traveling shoes
Leroy
on.
he's the one that had fired him. I mean, you know,
Anyhow,
You can't go into the whole story about Leroy, but
But he said- but-
at least tell the story about when he was out on the field and the sergeant told him to put a little umph into it. Where was that, in Wyoming or something?
well, that was in Cheyenne.
he made
Fort,
movies. You know,
Fort
he was
Russell.
a movie maker too. He was into Western.
Oh yeah, he was in a movie where they used the cavalry for, you know, some kind of a charge, and he was in the cavalry.
He said some were Indians and some were.
But he missed out on the war. This was in the 30s, right?
Oh yeah, this was in the 20s, you mean?
20s. So he wasn't involved in any fighting.
Oh no.
He was involved in fighting all the soldiers. He was fighting our guys.
Yeah,
Well, tell
he
about-
said, huh?
Go ahead. I was going to say, tell about when the sergeant told him to put.
Well, they were out on the maneuvers out on the prairie. Like he said, it was nothing between Cheyenne and Amarillo, Texas, but a barbed wire fence and sand. And he said it was, they had come one of them snows, you know, where you don't shovel from down here, you shovel from up here, work your way down. And of course, he was in this cavalry, horse-drawn equipment. And, was that somebody at the door?
No,
It's just the TV.
Well, anyhow, he was, they had got, the caissons had got stuck. And the sergeant,
This was horse-drawn stuff.
the horse-drawn cavalry,
Yeah.
cavalry, yeah. And his sergeant was old Irishman, great big old husky guy. He said there weren't no boys. In other words, he was about the only boy in the outfit, you know. Thought he was a man, but he said he found out that he was just a boy. They didn't have pumps in the Army then. Unless it one slipped in like he did. Lies about his age, you know. I mean, these old seasoned veterans, you know. And he said this old sergeant come up to him and he had his face right in his mouth, said, Nick, said, give it a little talking about pushing this, you know, had his hands out, pushing the case on. He just used it as a prop, you know. And so, of course, he had to give him some lip, you know. He told him, well, if you want to give it some up, so why don't you do it and give it some up? He said, when I woke up, he said, blood was froze to my face. And everybody gone. I'm laying in the snow with blood, you know, caked my face.
Night was coming on, he said, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he said, first thing I done was to get up and go and get my face looked at. In other words, when he could find where he was at, you know, get to the first aid station. And he said, the second thing he wanted to do was go look up that sergeant and shake his hand. And be good, be on good terms with him.
Yeah, I didn't want to have him mad.
Were they friends after that?
Yeah, he didn't say.
Tell about how Leroy, how industrious he was when he was in the brig, supplying the officers with all their needs.
Oh, well, he was, see, in other words, let me tell you the story about how he went over the hill. He went over the hill because a bunch of them, of course, he was in the brig at the time. I think he stayed in the brig more than he did the regular army anyhow. And they had made a pact that about 4 or 5 of them that they were going over the hill if Hoover was elected. This was in 1928, November of 1928. And said just as soon as the election returns come in and he was elected, they just walked. That's all there was to it. And from the Army, he did, you know, he just go from here to yonder, work a day here, and, you know, just a wanderer.
How long did he stay out?
Well, he stayed long enough, 2 or 3 more years, before he ever come home. So everybody around home thought that he had done got out.
So he was AWOL for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, he was AWOL about 3 years, and when he came home, he must have told some of his close friends that he was AWOL, and so one of them was this Kennedy boy that was supposed to have been a good friend of his. And in fact, my dad had sold him his shoe shop, or let him take it over rather, when earlier. But anyhow, he seems that this boy Alton Kennedy was in Washington in some kind of illegal business, whatever it was. You know, I don't know whether he was selling bootleg liquor or what it was, but he was mixed up in something underhanded. And Leroy went up there, and you know, he must have got too close into his business that he afraid he might learn too much and report him, or, you know, turn him in.
So Leroy went to Washington
So,
to see this guy.
yeah, so to beat him to the punch, he knew that Leroy was was AWOL, so he turned Leroy in and got his, I think it was 100 something.
Did Leroy know who turned him in?
Oh yeah,
How did he know it?
because he had to come to the hearing. See, and Leroy said that if he could have got over there to him and got his fingers around his throat, it wouldn't have been no more Alton Canada.
Did he want to get him after he got out?
Well, no, he said afterwards, he said he fared so good. He figured he'd done him a favor. He tells the story, you know, said he could, they made him a trustee right off the bat. He served his time, I think they gave him 18 months to serve.
Somewhere around Fort Meade or somewhere.
No, it was Fort Washington, right out of D.C.,
Okay.
right down on the Maryland side, though,
Okay.
of the river.
Yeah.
Because we went up there when we went on this trip, and we caught the boat, the
They
supply
might have
boat.
renamed that place though now.
But anyhow, it was just a few minutes down from Washington. That supply boat rode us down there. You went over 10 or 15 minutes in the boat, don't seem like. Just over into Maryland side. And they didn't have nothing against Roy, but, you know, they had to carry out the order, but they made him a trustee right off the bat, you know, and I don't think they kept him locked up over a few days before they just made him a trustee. He had a trash wagon to pick up the garbage. He had in the summertime, an ice wagon to deliver ice to the officers' quarters, and in the winter, coal to the officers' quarters. That was his job. Well, he said if the officers was going to have a party and they needed extra ice, they'd leave a little note on the door of the refrigerator. I mean the ice box, there weren't no refrigerators, it was ice boxes, that they needed another hunk of ice, you know. And his carton of Camels laying on top of the ice box for him is for his problem, you know, trouble. So he'd go back and get another block of ice and slip it in there and get his carton of Camels. Then he'd take them Camels, trailer for services, you know, anywhere from washing his clothes. He said, man, he was faring like the God in there. He said, listen, here's the funny part. He said he could go down the street on that wagon. You know, say you had his trash wagon. He was picking up the garbage and all. He'd go around behind it, you know, he'd go down the street. And here was these girls working in the commissary, hold up 2 fingers. And go down there, and come back, lift up that lid, and there would be 2 cartons of Camels laying right there on the top.
For what?
For what? For services with
That's pretty cheap. Camels was probably $1.50 a carton, maybe $1 a carton. That's
What,
pretty-
you mean the girls were paying him?
Sure.
Oh, Leroy, he was true Nichols.
And you know, to show you that I know what I'm talking about, I mean, and he won't lie, when we went to the trip,
Close the door.
I won't go into that, but we went by there. We got up with some of them same girls. See, this was
Do they still take
one
Camels?
of a year or two, let's see, had elapsed the time
He was still working there, huh?
oh yeah.
Now wait a minute, I want to get this straight.
But anyhow,
Wait, this is important. They were paying him he was paying them.
No, they were paying him.
They were paying him what?
2 cartons.
No, if he wanted one or two, depending on how low he was on cigarettes, yeah, whether he go two fingers or one finger.
Yeah.
See?
But they furnished him all
Oh,
cigarettes.
yeah. And
So they were buying.
he never had to wash a piece of clothes. He said the time went by so quick that when he called him up to discharge him, he said,
He didn't want to go.
you know, it's kind of sad. Yeah.
And he
But,
was making bootleg liquor too.
oh
wasn't
yeah, he was making brandy. He said, I don't remember what kind, whether it was with meal or what, but
Potato peelings, was that it?
whatever it was, and the way, where he was aging it, it was homebrew, that's what it was. He built him a little things about like a outside toilet out on the dump where he'd carry all his garbage, and he had him a basement under it, and a floor in it. No, it had it camouflaged so nobody wouldn't guess it, but he had a certain way to get into it, and that's where he kept it to age it, and he had to age it so long, you know. And he said, of course, by that time he already knew everybody, who he could trust, who he couldn't trust in the office, you know. And he said one day this guy come down there trying to catch him. He said that they, you know, enough of the talk had got out. They knew what was going on, but they couldn't catch him, see. So he come down there and he says, Nick, says, had you ever stopped to think now, you've got a lot of time on your hands, and you know, down here on the dump, this would be a good place to hide some, you know, some home brew to age, you know. Leroy said he's standing right there within 10 or 15 foot of several cases of it undergoing the aging right then. But he was about to tell him that. Well, anyhow, that's enough of that.
What happened to that operation when he left though? Did he pass it on to somebody
I
else?
don't know. I doubt it. He just left that. But anyhow, to get back to the story about when me and him started out, well, when we left Rocky Mount, we got to Washington.
How long after you got back from the CC camp?
But this was,
How long was this? Was it a week?
just a week or two. No, it was April.
So you were.
I'd say by the 1st of May, anyhow, we was on that trip.
So when you got back
So
to
you
the
and
CC,
him happened to get out of, you got out of CC's and he got out of the brig up there about the same time, I guess, huh?
No, that's when he got out of the thing out there in Virginia, on the rock pile.
Oh, okay.
See, because that was when he was coming home from the army part.
But you both got home about the same time.
Yeah,
Him from
and
the jail
we both had a lot in common, that our daddy wasn't too interested in
and you were
taking
both,
that much time with us.
How old were you when this was going on?
Well, I was 18.
So you were 18, just out of CC's, and you had an older brother.
Wait a minute. I was 19 then. Doggone right. I was 30. That was 35. See, I was 18 when I was down with George, because I was old enough to get in the CC camp.
So you and Leroy were just looking for something to do, kick your heels up a little bit.
Oh yeah, we were just. He said. In fact, I think he was the one who approached me. He says, "You want to take a little trip with me?" I'd like to go up to Chicago. He said, "You know, it's a windy city."
What was this in the winter or the summer?
Oh, this is the summertime.
Yeah.
And I remember right there in Rocky Mount, there by the Tar River Bridge on Church Street, right, not too far from Luce's house. We went there to catch a ride. We were both standing together. And we stood there for, I know, 45 minutes or so. Couldn't get nobody to stop. He said, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's split up. He said, you go across the bridge, I'll stay on this side. And when we get, in other words, we'll meet in Washington. Now, I'd never been to Washington, didn't know nothing about it. But he said, we'll meet at the Union Station. Just find the Union Station, and we'll meet there tonight. So, sure enough, I got to Union Station. I don't remember whether he was already there, but we met there, you know, before too late in the night. And then the next morning, we went down and caught that boat down to Fort Washington. And you know, them people, they threw out the welcome mat to him. You know, everywhere he went. You know, slapping him on the back, you know, and, well, the women too, you know. That's what I was going to say. And
you going to tell that story despite it, isn't it?
anyhow, he said, he would ask him, he said, now, it was getting on near about dinner time, he said, which company's feeding best for lunch? You know, MILK. And they would tell them, well, probably K Company was the best, you know. So we goes over there and it rolls out the welcome mat. We get a big feed right there.
This is in a brig, right?
No, this is in the Army base.
Oh.
The barracks where they, and at that time they had the food right on the table. You know, a lot of times they have a buffet style. You go through a line, but the tables were set, and then all the KPs had to do, when a bowl got empty, they brought another full bowl, kept it full. So whenever you got up from the table, there was just about as much left on the table as when you sit down. And I don't know whether other people came and eat behind you or not out of them same bowls.
So you stayed
Must
there.
be a
and
lot
then you took off. Tell me.
Y'all just spent one night there?
Yeah,
Just
one
long
day.
enough to get acquainted?
Yeah, yeah, one night. And
Where
one
did you
day.
go first when you took off on the hobo?
Well, we went from there to Baltimore, and from there to Wheeling, West Virginia, on into Columbus, Ohio.
What did you eat? How did you eat when you were?
Well, we just bums. I go to this here, in other words, we hit a town, it was this little place right across the river from Wheeling, West Virginia, in Ohio. And Leroy said, you take this side, I'll take the other side, okay? Hey lady, I'm in the little dire straits, I'm trying to, you know, get to so-and-so, you know, town 200, 300 miles away. I got a job, my uncle's got a job there for me. You know, you got a spiel. And I'm hungry, I ain't got no money. And, oh, wait a minute, let me see. Goes in the house and comes back with a paper bag, you know, with some sandwiches in it. And then this particular woman I want to tell you about said, after she brought that to me, and wishing me good luck. Oh, she said, by the way, as like a P.S. on the end of a letter, do you like chocolate cake? I said, Lord, how much? Here she comes. She said, just a minute. She went back in there. I can't remember if it was a 5 or 6 or 7 layer cake, but she come in there with about an eighth of a cake slice of chocolate cake.
Did you tell Leroy about the cake?
Oh yeah, no,
You
we pool our resources, you know.
Yeah. Did you, when you go up and knock on the door, did you just ask for food, or did you offer to work, or what?
Oh yeah, well I'd offer, yeah, if she needed any wood split or
Did
You
people ever
knew
give
he
you
never
work?
was gonna take you up.
leaves raked, you know, I'd offer to work, yeah.
Did you ever do any work? I mean,
No.
People.
No, they,
If they offered work, you went on, didn't they? He didn't have time to do the work, did you?
in fact, I'd go to a restaurant and ask them the same thing, say, I don't mind washing dishes if you just give me something. They said, well, we got our own dishwasher. He said, but sit down, I'll give you a bowl of soup or something.
Right.
They wouldn't turn you away.
This was during the Depression,
Oh yeah.
and so people were more used to people.
Well, it was in 1935. It was still, it wasn't right in the height of the Depression, like I would say in 1931, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of work showing up. Nowhere Papa was getting a few houses to build, you know, enough to kind of stay busy.
Yeah.
And it was beginning to kind of ease up a little bit. But we made that trip, and what I wanted to tell you about was,
During that trip, didn't you, I heard you tell about a penny you crossed a bridge with, you didn't have a
yeah,
penny?
that was the place.
That was the thing?
That was the place, leaving Wheeling to this, it was a little university town, and I can't remember the name of it, that where the woman had the chocolate cake from. But we was walking across, and the toll collector was on the far side, on the West Virginia side, I mean the Ohio side. And it was 1 penny for walking across it, and it must have been a nickel or something like that to drive across it. And when we didn't have the penny, they were going to send me back. They said he must have just took the penny out of his own pocket to pay his own, rather than, anyhow he let us cross, but it was a penny toll, I remember.
Well, how did you and Leroy split up when you?
Well, we didn't split up, but we were about to. We got to Indianapolis, and we got into this, you know, the government had some sort of haven for the homeless to keep them off the streets, I reckon, and help you out in a way. You could go there and sign up to, Now, if you had a good legitimate store, they would give you, it was either 1 or 2 nights lodging and meals. But if you were going to want to stay a week, more than a couple of days or whatever the minimum was, they had work details. So in Indianapolis, we decided we were going to stay about a week that time. So the fella signed me up to go to work on it was like a city farm where they raised the vegetables, I reckon for the jail population and different, anybody that the city had anything to do with feeding.
All right, we're gonna have to.
All right. All right, we'll continue our trip in Indianapolis. I was sent to the farm where the vegetables were raised for the city jail and different foods, peoples that were working for the city or whatever. And Leroy worked at a shoe shop to get his, he said the main thing he wanted a job in the shoe shop was to get his own shoes sold. So we stayed around there, I don't know, several days. And that's where this bunch of ptomaine poisoning took effect. One crew out on not the one that I was with, but one crew was fed some canned beef tongue sandwiches that was out on for lunch. That was out on this work detail, and they took ptomaine poison. They brought them in, and they were some kind of sick. They carried them on to the hospital from there. And I don't think none of them died, but I'm telling you right now, they were sick. They were, vomiting both ends.
Have you ever eaten that beef tongue?
No, they didn't feed us the same thing that they did. I don't, if I've ever eaten it, I don't know, but it was just some contaminated beef tongue sandwiches, canned beef tongue. And, but to continue, we went, I was getting kind of homesick, to be honest, and wanted to get back over on the East Coast. And we went down to the yards this particular morning that we were going to leave, but Leroy was determined to get on to Chicago. He said, we were down there and then found out which train was heading towards Chicago and which one was coming back east toward, Columbus, Ohio. And I said, well, I'm heading this way. And he let me walk 102 yards before he turned around and come on back. He wouldn't leave me. But he really wanted to go to Chicago. Anyhow, we got back to Rocky Mount. And that was the time that, I don't know what month, but August or September, probably September. I did go to work one day at that time. And I worked off and on with him quite a bit, but mostly it was off. It would be on a while and then off a long while. And that winter, I remember we built this house. He got this job to build a house for Albert Davenport. And where we had to go out there that winter, we worked all the winter making the window frames and different things by hand. Actually had to bore the holes with a bracing bit and clean the lumber off and everything and priming them, getting it painted, a coat of paint on it. So when the sun went to shine, we built the house, and that's how I first met Pauline, my first wife. And I was working on this house early in the spring, like, I don't know, it might have been April of 36. No, it was earlier than that. It was probably February or March, because she came by on a cart with her daddy going to Winneville to get groceries. And I remember seeing her and somebody telling me who she was. And she kind of looked longingly at me as she passed by, And then a little later, as you know, Leroy's the latest man, he finds all the women folks in the neighborhood. Told me one day, he said, Johnny, he said, I got a little girlfriend that I want to get you to go to see. He said, she's a little young for me, he said, but I think she's just right for you. So he told me all about how to find it. And this was Easter. I remember that. It was Easter Sunday. I walked out there. It was about I don't know, 3 or 4 miles out of Runaway out in the country. And just introduced myself, made myself at home, and to make a long story short, that was Easter. On the 3rd of August, we were married. And the scuttlebutt was 95 to 98% that it wouldn't last 6 months. But it lasted for 53 years. And
How did you get along with her folks and the family?
oh, we all loved each other. Everybody except BT. BT swore to kill me. He's going to cut my head off.
Who all was living there?
Skin, Uncle Skin was and Lovett, and they had a little boy was named James. He was about 6 months old at that time, and we just one big happy family.
Was you just moved in, or you go out there and visit, or?
Well, you see, Charlie was just like a lot of people back in them days. He would take in any old stray cat and just. He told me one time. He said, "You know, Johnny," he said, "as long as I got a biscuit, you got half of it." You know, I just think the world of it. But you know, I tell you, I think I probably took advantage of him a little bit, in a way, because and it didn't do me no good, because I'll tell you, the only problems that me and Pauline ever had was when we were staying there. I think that is one big mistake with anybody to move in with the parents, because to start with, it gives the man a sense of, you know, if I don't work, what difference do it make if I work or don't work?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Pa's going to feed me, in that case, Charlie, and
What about BT? He didn't take to it.
well, after he got over his killing ideas on me, he was still mad enough. He just left and went and joined the army. He couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I married his little baby sister. Married his little baby sister.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he just thought the wolf doesn't like Pauline.
Yeah.
And here I come along and take her away from him, and he just felt like that.
They were real close,
Yeah, they were real close.
So you got married, when was it you got married, in August?
August 3rd, 1936.
And what did you do after you got married?
Well, we worked around there off and on a little bit for my dad, and then shortly after that, PWA started up under Roosevelt. And that was public works, building additions on schools, and upgrading schools. In other words, if it needed some work done on them, it was done through the PWA. That was some kind of a federal assistance, as long as they worked, they paid that scale. In other words, that was the first beginning of any scale. They'd pay what they wanted to, except the minimum. I mean, they had to pay the minimum, was 25 cents an hour, but that was the minimum on anything.
Would you say that Mama's family was worse off than Granddaddy than your family was?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of lives did they have?
Oh, they had a terrible one. I tell you that.
They were sharecropping.
Sharecropping. And you heard about slavery,
Uh-huh.
black slavery. Well, this was white slavery.
What did they eat? What was it when you get up in the morning? And
Well, let me show you what they were doing. When I met them, they were farming on halves. That meant that the landlord owned the land and the team. In other words, furnished all the equipment, and against their labor. Their labor was matched against the owner of the land and the team and the wood to cure the tobacco and everything. Well, A.W. Ames was the landlord, and his store there in Winnable was a produce. In other words, it was more or less a combination, grocery and dry goods. In other words, hardware, you name it, they had it. And each one of them had a coupon book. You know what a coupon book is? It gives you so many coupons, for that week. And you get one, I don't know whether it was weekly or monthly, but it was $4 a week for Charlie. And skin was $3 a week. So they pooled it, made $7 a week to feed the whole crowd.
This book was given by
The landlord.
By the
You
landlord.
had to buy it at his store.
And he had to trade it out in his store at his prices.
It was a script.
And in other words, it's like a continuation of the old mines, coal miners. You worked for them, you lived in their house, and you bought your groceries from their commissary at their prices.
I heard Mama talk about going out in the canal that ran down by the house and catching eels when the canal would dry up, eating eels.
Yeah,
So they must have been eating real poor.
yeah.
What kind of food did they eat?
Well, in the summertime, they generally have groceries. Vegetables, because Mammy was very smart raising
They raised their own vegetables.
raised their own vegetables.
But they didn't
But
can
in-
a lot of stuff, did they, like y'all did later?
Well, not a whole lot.
they didn't have.
One thing, they didn't have time, and they would can a few tomatoes or something like
so what did
that.
they eat in the winter? When there was no garden?
Well, they had to
Beans.
see. Now you have to figure here.
Beans and molasses.
Yeah,
fat
beans
back.
and cornbread and molasses, and they would generally have them a couple of pigs to kill. In other words, they would feed them their scraps from the table, or in other words, and some corn. But to get a hog up to 100 pounds at a year and a half old, and nothing but skin and bone. I ain't never seen Charlie raise a hog that was fat like I used to raise. I never did, because he didn't have stuff to feed him. And not only, it don't make no difference, just elaborate on this thing about a landlord and tenant. It don't make no difference how good the crop sold or how bad it sold. They were always just under paying out. In other words, either just breaking even, or maybe owed the landlord $100, or the landlord owed him $100. It was never any big amount of money. And like I say, the landlord's books are the only one that counted, and you could keep all the books you wanted to. It wouldn't make no difference. So whenever you settled up with him in the fall, if you were lucky enough to have $100, that's the $100 that you normally, ordinarily, you think should have been kept a close rein on and bought some groceries through the winter. But most of them people were heavy drinkers. They didn't have nothing to live for. It didn't look like that. So whenever they did get some money, they just drank it up.
I know Mama used to say her daddy used to drink a lot.
Yeah, and
I don't think he ever got wild and crazy when he drank.
well, he had quieted down when you come along. But she said that he was just like Skin.
When he was younger.
Just when she was a younger girl. Just a few years before that, it didn't make no difference. Whenever that back of market opened, he didn't draw a sober breath until it was closed. In other words, that his last steak has been sold. And if it was any chance of any money, he was drinking it up fast, and it was going to accumulate.
When you went out,
It's a shame.
When you first went out there, were you going to court Lovey or?
No, it's Skin. Pauline. But I mistook Lovey. See,
Everybody thought that you were going to.
Well, when I went there, the only girl that was there that morning, the girls, Bert and Pauline both had gone visit somebody up Strood. And I just came in and I kept looking at Lovey. She had this little baby in her lap. And I said, "To be sure, this is not the Pauline." Nobody don't introduce herself, I'm just here. Can you imagine? And that's the way it was. You go in and everybody make yourself at home just like they knew you all their life.
Well, didn't Charlie Manning, when you told him you were Nichols, he knew Granddaddy some way?
Well, I don't know whether he did that particular day or not, but later in talking, he remembered. See, he and my daddy and A.W. Ainge all went to school together.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew that
A.W.
knew of one of them.
A.W. Ainge and Charlie Manning and Fred Wellington, that was one of the group too. They were all boys together, And so, you know, it comes, you know, we later learned that, about him knowing him and, you know, but,
So how did you get married? Did you get married at a church? or-
oh no, we went over to, and this is a curious thing. Nowadays, notice whenever I ask Mammy about marrying her, oh yeah, just take on over there and get married, you know. I mean, there's no.
That's kind of like a deal with your son the other day.
There ain't no planning. See, we go to Richmond, I mean to Greenville, and get our marriage license. I don't remember, like Monday morning or Saturday or whatever. And then that night, we know Mr. Nobles is the preacher over there at the church over there, but I've never been in it. But I knew him, and in fact, I think he and my dad, I believe him and my dad was some kin, or his wife and my dad or something. Anyhow, he took us out on the back porch, and him, his wife, and I think it was a sister he had living with, old maid sister. They were the two witnesses. And we goes on the porch, on the side porch. This is August, see, this is warm weather. And I spent my honeymoon night in Aunt Matt Stokes' house. She threw out the welcome mat for us. And then after that, Papa let me move in up the front room of his house. We moved in there. We had a cardboard box for a table to sit down on the floor to eat our food on. We had a 2-burner hot plate to do what cooking we cooked on. I'm telling you, times was tight.
So you live with Granddaddy.
And Mammy gave us some kind of sleeping quarters. I can't remember whether it was a bed or just an old mattress that lay on the floor. And after I worked a while, I ordered a bed from Spiegel May Stern for $39.50. And I was paying like so much a month, $1.50 a month on it. That was in Chicago, seemed like Spiegel. Well, I don't know, 6 months or so, every time I'd get ahead a little bit of money, I'd send them a couple of dollars extra, you know, until I got it down about paid, or maybe I did get it paid for. Boy, they sent me this gold certificate. Man, that thing was worthy of framing.
Did it have Ed McMahon's picture on it?
I didn't have Ed McMahon's picture, but it had some, you know, it was like a gold star, and it said, "You have been selected." In other words, with your good credit standing and all, they wanted to fill out the welcome mat.
Well, where were you living now? I'm confused.
I'm in Winterville.
No, but I mean, were you living with your people or with Mama's people?
Well, I lived with my dad there. See, Papa had got married to Anna Lee.
When you first got married, you went and lived with your folks.
Yeah, but
you said you moved in with Mama.
well, yeah, and I don't know. We had a little falling out with it. You know, this young woman that Papa had married, 18-year-old Anna Lee. Didn't nobody get along with her too good.
She was younger than you were.
Yeah, she was younger than. No, she's about my same age. Cause see, he had married a couple of years earlier, and I was 20, and she was about.
How long did they stay married?
I think it must have been about 3 or 4 years there. Long enough they had a baby, and
Whatever happened to the baby?
the baby died from lack of attention. I tell you right now, if that was to happen today, they'd have that woman in jail so quick you wouldn't know with all that what the neighbors knew about it.
But later on, they had another baby, didn't they?
No, well, they might have. I don't know. I've heard that they did after they split up, after they broke up. You know.
Were they were married though?
They were married at the beginning, yeah, and when they had the baby. But that girl was laying there on that bed in a cool room, no heat in there.
You mean the baby or the?
Yes, sir, that baby. All day, a lot of times, wet, crying, and that mama could care less. And I think what she died from was pneumonia. In other words, she just died from lack of attention. There wasn't nothing wrong with her. And she's buried down at Buffalo.
Were you around when that baby was living?
Oh yeah, her name was Pecananel.
And how old was the baby when he died?
Might have been a year old.
So how long? So, what happened to the woman after she left?
Well,
Did Granddaddy kick her out or what?
well, she left him, and her people had moved to Little Washington, North Carolina, and she went down there, and then that was right before the war started, 41 or 2, when they were all going up to Norfolk, and Papa went up to Norfolk, and so I'm told that he run up with her up there. In other words, and they cohabitated some up there. Even, they must have been divorced, because later on when he married Mammy, he checked. In other words, he had to check and be sure that it was right. In other words, I think she had got a divorce. That's what it was. Anyhow, he checked to be sure it was okay when he married Mammy.
So you lived with them with
I don't know, off and on for maybe 2 or 3 months.
And then you moved in?
Then I went in. I don't know. I can't remember. We'd done so much moving. We'd move in a house and stay there a month or 2, and then the circumstances dictated to what we'd done. Whether we go to live with Charlie, her people, or whether we was able to pay a month's rent and move out to ourselves. You know what I mean? We were just constantly moving back and forth to here and yonder. And but in the go round,
this would have been in 36, 37?
Well, 37. Well, in 38, like I say, we were getting a little better off then, because that PWA work was shaping up, and they paid us.
What kind of work were you doing for them?
Building school, in other words, a lot of them were building a gymnasium, or auditorium, or classrooms, different, all through Pitt County.
So you were doing carpenter work?
Oh yeah, I was doing carpenter work. I had, I wasn't hired on as a carpenter, as a carpenter's helper. But my little experience with my dad and I had worked with some other contractors around Greenville too, off and on, pick up a job to work build house, it was a few months job. And as Earl said, the happiest time of our lives, and he was on the same job right there in Runnable, was building, it was the high school. In other words, the old grade school sitting over here, it was an old 2-story kind, and they built another high school right over here, right on the same corner, lot. It was a big square there, and that was where we got our mechanics pay started. They just said, well, they took it on themselves. But like Earl said, every time we go somewhere, it was running. In other words, when it was go here, you didn't walk over to yonder, whatever, you run. And that made an impression on them boys, them superintendents and all. Good construction, I'll never forget them. And they put us on as carpenters. I think that was 75 cents an hour. We had been making 40 cents, I believe it was. Now, some of that first might have been 60 cents, but they raised it to 75 before it was over with. I remember that. We were making 75. Because I had been used to 75 cents when I went to Norfolk, and I went to work at Norfolk, in Portsmouth there. The first job I ever got up there in probably 1940, 39 or 40, for 90 cents an hour.
But you skipped, in that school where you met your maker early?
Well, no, that's right. You want to know something about how close I come to getting killed? It was on a school building in Falkland or Farmville, North Carolina, one of the two.
Well, that WPA work?
No, that PWA work.
PWA, whatever.
The boss had sent me and Thurman Meeks, my first cousin, up there to take up some shingles. It was a tower over not the elevator, but the stairway that went up. It was a 2-story building, but how the tower went up on high over the stairway, kind of like a 3-story building, because it was higher than the roof of the 2-story main part there. somebody had started, while they had the elevator, the scaffold up there, laying brick or whatever, or putting the cornice around there, had started the shingle, but they hadn't put just put up maybe 2 foot of shingles around it was a hip roof thing. And they had started shingling, and then had torn the scaffold down maybe a third of the way down. In other words, they figured they were through with it, so they had brought the scaffold down as they brought down and just quit on it. Evidently maybe quit at quitting time or something, and hadn't finished it. So the boss sent us up there we had to rip those shingles up because there wasn't no black paper on it. You got to have black paper on it. I don't know why they didn't do it at the beginning, and somebody just screwed up the whole thing. And back in them days, everything was sheeted. It was full plywood, and we had boards, 6-inch tongue groove boards called roofers, tongue groove roofers. And well, on the bottom of them shingles, it had something just like isinglass. It was just little flakes, and just like greased lightning too. Well, we got up there. We had to go up. I forget how we got up there, but we come up over the roof of the main part, and I believe we had a little short ladder there to go up to the top of that one from the roof of that building, the main building. And we got up there and was straddling the hip. We were tearing, and as long as the hip was coming down there, we could straddle that and reach over there. Well, over here was the end. When that thing was probably maybe 15, 18 foot square, you know what I mean? So you couldn't stay here on this hip and reach all the way over to that end. In other words, we could reach here for maybe half of the way, all right. But then, I was the bold one always. Old Thurman, he was very cautious himself. He wasn't about to get no predicament like I was getting in. So I was sliding along, kind of sitting down and sliding, reaching as far as I could and pulling up them shingles. And then all of a sudden my foot, in other words, I must not have been sitting flat down. I must have been kind of sliding along on my feet, squatted down. And my feet went out from under me, just like a greased pig. And of course it threw me back, and my hand just went feeling just like that. Well, that finger right there saved my life. Found a knot hole.
While you're hanging off?
I'm sitting there looking down at all that scaffolding and brickwork and concrete down yonder, maybe 30 foot below me. And I'm, just another few inches and I'd have been gone.
Were you hanging off?
And when I realized, no, I hadn't slid over, but I was.
Because you couldn't hold up with one finger if you're hanging off, couldn't you?
No, but it had stopped my slide. Thurman, he's sitting up there on the hip. He said he had done closed his eyes because he didn't want to see me go, and he knew I was gone, and there wasn't nothing he could do.
You didn't find that hole; it just appeared to your fingers.
Well, that's what I say. I didn't never see it. I mean, I was just scraping, grabbing, and first thing I knew, my finger was in the hole. I never seen the hole,
Now that's kind of.
No, it probably made a hole there. It might have been a knot in the hole. I might have pushed that knot out of the hole. You know what I don't know about that. But I tell you right now, that was the closest shave I've ever had. I've had some more that was pretty close to it, but that is the closest call I've ever had. And it shook me up, so we had to come down. It was after I sat there for a minute or two. In fact, Thurman told me, he said, don't move. He was afraid if I started to move that I might ever lose my footing again. Mm-hmm. He said, stay right where you're at and just don't move. He couldn't reach me. He said, I'll go get a rope. So he scooted down and went and got a rope and throwed it to me, and I took my other hand and run it around me, and then he pulled me up. And, that was I don't know what time of the day, but it was in the morning. I'm pretty sure it was before dinner time. He wouldn't let me go back to work that day. Said, you go home. I must have been about as white as a sheet when I come down from there.
Mhm.
So where were you living when David was born?
Oh, I was living with Charlie and Mammy.
Uh-huh.
That's where David was born, right there where Pauline lived, in the front corner bedroom.
Wasn't born.
That's one thing I can tell you about Mammy. She really thought there wasn't nothing like me. Charlie thought the world of me, and it transferred right on over to Mammy after Charlie died. Because, I mean, here was a woman living in a tenant house that, you know, you could feel the wind blowing through it every time it come a little cold snap. And she had given me and Pauline the best room in her house. You know, we were prized property to her. That front corner bedroom was the most desirable room in the house. And she, and, you know, everybody else
How
slept.
many bedrooms was in that house?
Well, see, she actually took, when I was there, she would take that sitting room. She
And
put
make
up a
it
bed in there.
Yeah.
And so you call that a bedroom, and that one, and the back bedroom, and then Skin and Lovett had that side one, you know, right by. Here's the pump on the porch. That window was right there. That was their room. That was where they always stayed as long as they stayed there.
So it was about four of them. It could be made into about 4 bedrooms.
Yeah, but one of them was actually a sitting room, but it was a big room, you know, and you could kind of have the bed over to one side and still sit around the heater, you know.
How long was it after David was born before you moved to Portsmouth, wherever it was you moved?
Well,
Where was your first
well,
move?
Betty was born there too.
Yeah.
See, I worked.
Betty wasn't born there, was she?
Yes, you.
She was born on right there at the old place. I mean, right there where Mom. I didn't think she was born there.
Yeah, I think she was born in that same house.
Is that right? Huh.
But see, in the meantime, we were working in Goldsboro, me and Earl, and that's where I was working in what year was it we signed up for Social Security? 37 or 8? 30. It was 37. We were building a Crescent's building there, and then after that was built, I worked over there in Greenville on a fire station, and they built a fire station and a jail, you know, where the court building,
Yeah.
where they try the people.
So you got married in 36?
City Hall they call it.
You got married in 36?
And then
And you stayed in Carolina 37, 38. What year did you move to Portsmouth?
well, 1940,
So you
we
stayed there
started
4 years.
going up there, working around.
So you worked around Carolina for 4 years after you got
But
married.
Daddy worked up in Portsmouth, and it seemed like leave the family down
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Now,
in Winnable.
in Runnable, because that's where Pope was born, right there in that house, right across from that service station. You know, but just two houses from the corner
And you were still staying
where the number 11 highway went through. And A.W. Ainge's a store there, and a service station, Sinclair station there, and right up the street, the second house on the right is where Pope was born. And so she was born in February of 41. But we had been to Norfolk working, and living in rat-infested and, you know, little holes that Pauline wanted to get back down there, you know. She felt like that, you know, it was just too hard on her or something, I don't know. So we went back there and rented that house, and that's where Pope was born. And then, when I...
Wait a minute, there was that
40
pony pasture, all that stuff was, when
Later.
you moved up later, it was later.
After Pope was born.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
All right, we moved up to, see, what happened, Thurman, we were riding back and forth every week. We'd go up there, come back on Friday night or Saturday night and go back Monday morning, 3 or 4 o'clock.
You and who else? You and
Me and Thurman and Leroy, that was the crew. Leroy was working, and we would kind of room together up there. In other words, we'd rent a room, and big room with a couple of beds in it, and then we'd eat at restaurants, Greek restaurants. That was on the Norfolk side. Well, pretty soon, Thurman's wife, Kathleen, said she's tired of that. She in North Carolina, and he in Virginia. So she went up there one weekend, and when she left, they had done bought a house over there at Northview. I thought that was the most foolish thing that anybody could do. Here the war was going to be over, There was talking about the war, and if it was the war to come, it was going to be over, and you're going to be back down in Winterville, and what in the world you going to do with a house up there? And as far as I know, if he's living today, he's still there. I know his people are still there. Last time I went by there, they were. Anyhow, we started, the first place I moved to was Banner's Cabins. Leroy he and his wife lived there. And I believe Earl lived there too. We was all renting there. But then when the summer, that was in the wintertime. So when the summertime come, them cabins brought too much money, and we had to move from there. They went up to maybe $50 to $75 a month. We were paying maybe $10 or $15 a month, 20 at the most. Well, we moved over there on the beach. Let's see, sometime that winter. That's right, we moved over there because we'd get a house there for a little nothing. But then we had to move down. And the outcome of it was we just kept moving right around until we got to the pony pasture you're talking about. And then from we left from there, that's when I rented a house in Alexander Park.
Yeah.
That was the best deal I ever had. $30 a month.
Nice, clean, new place.
Oh yeah, brand new houses, brand new refrigerator.
I was about 4 years old then.
And you was going to school in a house over there, you
Well, I
know?
was 5, 6 then.
Yeah, you was.
So you're talking about 41 long then, 37, 6, be 43.
Yeah, 43, because that's where Tudor was born, up there in that hospital at Norfolk. And we were living in Alexander Park at the time, because I remember we had to cross the ferry. Yeah, that was it. Things like that ferry would never get there. With the ambulance. We'd be on the ambulance going to take Mama to Norfolk General Hospital. And so when we got over there and living there and working in the Navy Yard, that's where I stayed until Uncle Sam says, "Boy, I need you." And I said, "Who, me?" He said, "Yeah." Pauline went down to the draft board. She said, "Lord have mercy, we got 4 little kids at home, and you ain't got nobody, can't get nobody but my husband." She said, "Lady, I tell you right now, we have done scraped the bottom of the barrel. We ain't got nobody else to get, except the fathers."
So what year was that?
That was in 1945.
45.
July, they called me for then, maybe May or so, but in July, I can't remember the exact date, but I was inducted into the Navy.
What was the first job you had when you moved down to Tidewater, when you were working down there?
Well, the first job went to work with a company that was building officers' quarters over in Portsmouth. Mm-hmm. It was a development exclusively for officers, in the military. And I worked there a while until that was a kind of a, I don't know if you call it a scavengers bunch, but it won't pay in union scale. And they paid us 75 cents an hour. And Thurman and Leroy had gone to work over in the naval base on the government jobs for 90 cents an hour. So I was making 15 cents an hour less. And as soon as Leroy could get me on, you have to understand, Leroy looked out for his kid brother, Yeah. I can say that about him. But the only thing about it, Pauline used to tell me, he said, "It's time to grow up and let Leroy tend to Leroy's business and you tend to yours." Said, because I was quitting too many jobs, following him around. Yeah.
So you worked a lot of jobs in Tidewater after you moved there?
Well,
You got drafted?
well, not too many, because mostly I was with the Virginia Engineering Company after I left this, once was building these officers' quarters. And then when I left them, of course it was on several different jobs, but it was still Virginia Engineers. Then Thurman, in the meantime, had put his application in and joined, got in the Navy Yard, civil service work, as a shipwright. And he was telling me about all the, you know, fanfare and everything that went with it, that was such a benefit and didn't have to worry about your job or nothing about it. You know, got me interested, so I went over, and sure enough, I was elected to join up with them.
What was
And I worked,
What were some of the ships you worked on?
I worked on, well, when I first went in there, we were building landing ship tanks, LSTs. And we were building 6 in the dock at one time and 4 at the building way. So I think it was about every 6 weeks they were turning out 10 of these LSTs. And that was mainly just to carry the troops, and tanks, and, you know, trucks and different things on. It was a big, they'd put a bunch of them in a convoy and run them up on the beach. They didn't draw about 3 foot of water. They could just run them right up on the beach.
Did you work on a carrier too?
Oh yeah, after we completed the set they were working on when I went in and built one more set, we started the aircraft carrier that turned out to be the Shangri-La. It wasn't named the Shangri-La at first, it was some other name, I don't even remember. But every piece of metal that would come down from the mold off had it stamped right on it, that name. And then all of a sudden, after Jimmy Doolittle made his famous swipe over Japan, over Tokyo, and, you know, when the Japs would question the survivors that they shot down, and they
didn't have
would,
enough gas to get back. Those
that was the problem. They just didn't have enough gas.
They go to China and went down over.
Yeah, they were shot down. A lot of times they were shot down before they could get to China. See.
So that
But every one of them would swear that they flew from Shangri-La. That was to confuse them. You know, Shangri-La is a place unknown, unknown place. So they thought, in other words, it was such a morale builder that they would name this ship Shangri-La, and everybody on it was going to be a volunteer. In other words, it was scrambling to get. In other words, they had. In other words, I forget 1,200 personnel or whatever it was on it. They had 30,000 volunteers wanted to get on it. They had to think.
Why so many?
Because everybody thought that would be the place to be. Man, this was
a modern ship.
Well, it was a modern, but it was the pride of the Navy. Can't you see? And the man that was the captain on it was a Annapolis man, rather, had never been to sea.
He's the one you said went by the book.
Went by the book.
And didn't make it.
And we were still putting down, in other words, making corrections after they had the sailors all on board, went out for the sea trials, you know, to go out for a couple of weeks, shoot all the guns, do all kind of maneuvers out there, and then come back in and make different minor adjustments to whatever they want to do. And while they were in port there with the sailors on board, then you'd see sailors come there for a weekend with a weekend pass, and the darn guy on the deck at the gangplank, we call it officer of the day, and his word is law. In other words, what he says goes. He'd look him over, he'd take his pass, and he'd look him over. Got a smudge on your shoe, pass up. Go back, lose it. I mean, whether it was there or not, you couldn't say, well, I don't see no smudge. You know what I mean? You don't argue with them people. And I've heard people on there, sailors say, well, when they get to sea, it's going to be a little bit different story. And I believe, just as sure as I'm sitting here, that it's 90% certain that man was shot by his own men.
Whatever happened to the boat?
What
The
happened?
boat was hit.
When did the guy the guy in charge of the ship get killed?
When the Japs hit it. with the
okay.
torpedo, with the suicide kamikaze.
Okay.
Two of them hit it, one in the forward elevator and one in the forward smokestack.
Yeah, okay. I knew
And
that.
went down, and the planes hadn't even been brought up on the flight deck. It was still down on the hangar deck, and all of the fuel and everything burning, you know. And said that when they brought it back in to West Coast, I don't know, one of them, Oregon or someplace over there, said that a bunch of the Norfolk people that had worked on it, you know, the superintendents and in other words, the key men with every trade, ship fitters, shipwrights, machinists, everybody sent a representative there to give their qualified expert testimony of what should be done. In other words, if it was worth fixing, you know what I mean, whether it was worth repairing. Well, by that time, seemed to me like maybe Germany had already surrendered, see, and they came back and see, it was designed and built right there in Norfolk. It won't say that it was designed in Brooklyn and built there. It was designed and built. So what they said went. In other words, when they, you know, they give the testimony at the hearings, wherever it was made, whether it was in Washington or where, they said, scrap it. It won't work rebuilding.
What kind of work were you doing?
The beams that held I want to tell you, that held the flight deck is about like big bridge steel, you know, maybe 6 foot tall I-beams, great big heavy thing. And it said that it goes across that whole ship. It's 300 foot long, wide, to hold up that flight deck. So they would just curl around just like you take a hairpin, and that heat had just twisted it.
It was mainly the explosion from the fuel of the plane.
Yeah, and all the fires, see, from the oil, because evidently the planes were fueled and ready to go, and it evidently it probably got to some of the magazines where the gunpowder and stuff was too, see.
What did you do on them ships, Dad? Like,
Well, I was a shipwright, and I worked,
Did you say it had wood deck?
yeah, that flight deck was all wood. We worked up there for months on end, putting down that decking. See, you put that, it was 3 by 6 that was beveled on the edge. When it come together, the bottom half of it come together, and then it V'd out at the top. And what they did was caulking. They had a caulking gun go along there with it worked with air pressure. And it was feeding that caulking, you know, oakum. You know what oakum is. It's a brown cotton-like stuff. It's right, greasy feeling. That's what they used to caulk it with. And then when they got that packed in there, then they put the hot tar in there, and to make it waterproof, see. And then every 4 foot, there was a channel iron, like a gutter, that run all the way across the ship. So any water that accumulated fell down in that gutter, and it was cross-matched with steel. I mean, you know, galvanized metal, steel. And the water would run to the side, kind of like a gutter. You understand what I mean? Rather than just have to stay up there and wait till the ship rolled to get off it. Every 4 foot it could get off in these channels. So what I was going to say, I worked on that, and then I worked on a lining crew for quite a while. After I had been in there quite a while, they put me with a fellow that was had been in there as a what do you call him, a apprentice. He had come through the apprentice school, and he was, boy, that boy knew everything. If you remember, don't you remember David taking a trip to me, the first load of chickens I carried in Norfolk? Didn't you ride with me up there? Huh?
yeah.
Don't you remember stopping in a service station, a restaurant in Emporia,
Yeah.
and meeting that fellow?
You know, he was in the weigh-in inspection or something.
Yeah, that's the man.
Weights and measures.
He said that was the best day's work he ever done when he left that shipyard, Navy Yard. And he got mad because a promised him, in other words, when you're apprentice, you promise all kinds of things. If you go up through that apprentice school, you're going to make leading man. You know what I mean? You got these big things in store. And he crossed the wrong man somewhere down the line, and they just got him there as a first-class mechanic, and that's where he stayed. They had it in for him. They put a black ball on
So
him.
he got out.
So he first threatened to get out. They told him, if you do, we're going to turn your name over to the draft board. He said, turn it over to them and be damned. He knew that he couldn't pass the exam. He had some kind of ear trouble, the equilibrium part.
Yeah.
And so he got out, and then, you know, like I say, years later, we were raising chickens, and I carried a bunch up there to Norfolk, and stopped in the place in Emporium, and he was in there. I hadn't seen him in years. He used to be a little skinny fella, and he done gained all kind of weight, looked like a real politician, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he told me then, he said that was the best day's work he ever done was when he got out of the Navy Yard and went to work with the state, weights and measures a bit.
Was that the time you were taking trips back down to North Carolina to see Mama's folks?
Oh yeah, we used to go down there every so often and visit with them.
Was it hard to get down there? In the car?
Well, we made trips. I remember one trip we made. You know, your tires was rationed, gas was rationed, and what we do, we take 2 or 3 cans of kerosene. I was living in a place, one of the places where they had a heat roller, and so I got stamps to buy heating oil or kerosene, and then I moved again to a place that I didn't need them, so I still had them, so I could buy all the kerosene I wanted. So I would take my stamp to buy gas, 3 or 4 gallons or whatever it called for, and put that in there and get it cranked up and warmed up, and put my kerosene cans in the trunk, and I'd take off. And as soon as I got the gas down a little bit, I'd start pouring my kerosene in there.
How did it run on that?
It run all right, but it just left a trail of black smoke.
So
That's right.
You couldn't stop robbing.
And well, you couldn't,
Cut it off too much.
you couldn't, well, if you cut it off, you better start it back up before it got cold. If it got cold, you'd have to have some more gas to get cranked up then.
How about telling about that
But
time you
what I was gonna
went
say-
from Norfolk to Winterville and had 16 flats?
Well, that's what I was going to tell you about. So we left with my kerosene all loaded up and ready to go, and you know, was leaving early in the morning because we're going to try to miss the heat of the day because my tires was, you know, patch on top of patch and, you know, blowout shoe on top of blowout shoe. Well, it's 140 miles from my house there in Norfolk, in Portsmouth Road, to Greenville. I can't remember exactly how many flats I had, but I finally rolled up in there that night.
How many hours did
We had left about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we got into Greenville. Well, we never did get to Charlie's house on that before I can't remember. Give out of gas, I believe, and kerosene too, or couldn't start it or something of it. Right there behind the university there in Greenville, coming up the highway behind the university, because I was coming around from Plymouth, from Newman, Plymouth, or somewhere down in there. I didn't come right down Eden, down 64. Anyhow, seemed to me like I had to. Can't remember just how I got over there, but anyhow, we finally got it. I believe I got old Skin to get me some gas. I must have got a taxi cab to carry me out there to get Skin, and he got some gas for one of his tickets and come over there, and we got the thing started and got it over to the house. Okay. This was like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. I'd been on the road for, 20 hours or more, coming 140 miles.
You could have walked it that fast.
I'm telling you, it was And I had this old pump and a you know, couple of cans of patching rubber. You take the tire off and you patch it and you pump it up. And, you know, put it back on, pump it back up, and you go down the road and 10 miles further, you got another one to blow
So
out.
that's 140 miles in 20 hours.
It was at least 20 hours, I know.
You could get there quicker on a bicycle than that. You could do 7 miles an hour on a bicycle.
And here I've got two or three kids in the car, and this was hot weather, you know, all day. Me out there patching tires on that side of the road in 95 or 100 degree weather, coming down that road 17, yeah, I think it was 17 from Norfolk to Elizabeth City. Yeah, Elizabeth City, that way.
What was the car story where you got pulled by a cop because you didn't have any brakes and you couldn't stop?
Oh man, that's a good one. This was before I got married though. This was in one of the layouts, you know, that's summer before I got married. Papa had bought this old car. I think it was about a 28 or 29 Chevrolet. And this was, 36. So it was about 8 years old. And of course, 8 years old, back in them days, you know, that was about the best of it. That's right. And he wanted to go down to Hyde County, North Carolina. That's down around Belhaven, somewhere down, going on toward the coast down in there, somewhere off from Newbern, or way back down in there, like you, kind of like you're going to Nags Head, I reckon, Hyde County. You ever heard of it? They raise a lot of corn down there. And they said that the land, that, you know, is just black as soot.
So what happened
About like that land down in Florida where they raise the cane. And they say you don't, back in them days, of course, I don't know what to do now. Said, but they go along with a hoe hound and punch a hole in the ground, drop a seed of corn. Do the same thing. And then you don't do nothing else but come back in there with your wheelbarrows and planks, roll your wheelbarrows on these planks and gather your corn. That's all you do. No work in it. That land is so rich. That's what was told.
Farmer's dream.
So Papa, he wanted to go down there and take a look at it. And, you know, he kind of get in a notion that he wanted some land back there, you know. So we take off. There's Papa.
You know, I wondered where I got my dreaming from. I think it come from Granddaddy and, you know, just a dreamer. That's what he
Well, me and Pauline done a lot of dreaming. See, we always wanted a farm. That was our
my
dream.
Granddaddy going, well, he was 50-something years old when he'd go in there and look at land.
Yeah.
You know, then he didn't buy nothing.
Well, see, he had tried to was going to buy some land there in Lewisburg, right out of Rocky Mountain. One time, me and Earl went up there and broke up the land, sowed all the tobacco beds. This was actually before the cane raising days. You know, this was right ahead of that.
So what happened about
And old Gupton was the cop's name in Rocky Mountain that owned the farm. And the next door neighbors up there, up the path, in other words, this was off the road, and it was this place, and then it was another place up there, and their name was Valentine's. I remember it as good as anything. The man, and he had, I think it was either 2 or 3 sons that lived there. No women, just these men. And all of them had beards, you know. Man, they looked like Santa Claus, sure enough. I remember that. But that petered out. I mean, after going in and I don't remember whether Paul bought a mule or rented a mule or what, but we had a mule and was breaking up the land and got the tobacco bed sowed, ready to go to farming. And then the next thing I know was something else.
He didn't carry through with a lot of things.
That's right. He would start a lot of things and never go through with it. But anyhow, getting back to that story, we were coming back from Hyde County, and we had just come through to Newbern, heading out across the river, you know, that bridge at Newbern, and you come out there, and then you hit a straightaway that you're coming on toward, you know, toward Duffel. I think that must be 64 you hit there. No, that ain't 64. That's some other road. But anyhow, it was a long, straight road. I remember that. We just come out of Newbern, crossed the river, cross the bridge, and go up there a little ways. There was a road, and it was like a big highway there. Of course, it was just a two-lane road, one a dual lane, you know, divided. Cause I tell you, I don't remember seeing no divided roads back then. Them days, don't I? Because it didn't need them. Man, you might be 15 or 20 minutes between cars coming down the road. So I see this car parked upside the road, way up the road. You could see 2 or 3 miles, and up there about a mile or more, I could see this car parked. This was like another fella parked or broke down or something. And then, when I got right aside of him, I see a gray goose sitting right up ahead of him. In other words, that car had blocked my view of him. He was in front of him.
Florida. At 11 Eastern, it's the most important show on the planet, Network Earth. That's all coming up tonight, right here on TBS.
Papa's in there, Leroy's in there, and Ray. Yeah, because Ray mentioned it. He was there. He remembers the story. And I don't know whether any of the girls was with it, but anyhow, I started slapping on brakes. Well, there won't no brakes. And I'm traveling, fast as that thing I go, because I've done opened it up now. I'm out on the open road.
What did he stop you?
I must have been going 50 miles an hour, huh?
What did he want to stop you for?
Traffic check, I reckon.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's 2 cops there, two patrolmen, and 1 car. And I'm putting on the brakes, and finally, as the thing kind of slows down, I'm changing gears, throwing it up in second, and finally bringing it down in low, and
Cutting it off.
It cuts off. And they're walking. I'm not. He's motioning for me to back up, and I stick my head out the door, and I say, I can't get it cracked. So here they come. Walk up there. One of them's got a pad. The other's got he's doing the examining. So he goes around, no tail light, no this, no that. Want to know what was the matter with the brakes. And I don't remember what story I give him, but finally he gets, and this man over here, he's writing it all down as he's telling about it. Grabs hold of that steering wheel. And the thing goes about like that, about 3/4 of the way around, and he comes back. He said, boy, how in the world you drive this thing? I told him, I said, well, once you get the hang of it, I said, it ain't bad, So he said, well, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you permission to carry this thing and get it off the road. He said, but don't put it back on the road after you get it home until it'll pass highway inspection. They didn't have no state inspection like they do now, but he said where it will pass inspection, highway inspection. I said, yes,